In the dungeons we slay, in the dragon's den we play. Raise a glass to the heroes who battle night and day. With a fiddle and a hurdy-gurdy, we'll sing the tales of old. In the tavern we gather, where the stories unfold. In the moonlight we
I
roam.
think so.
Okay, good. Cool.
The less coherent leads to more work, which is fun.
Mm.
Yeah.
There was one thing I wanted to touch on, which was obviously for those who have purchased the product, they would see that it's set in the tail end of the third edition of the Forgotten Realms in the context of the timeline. It's set in the mid 1370s Dale Reckoning. That was an intentional decision on our part, only because we are working on, as Eric is working on, a range of adventures all set in that timeline. And so this product came as an adjunct to that work, and so it was easier. And I know that probably there's a significant amount of fans out there who wish that we had done the Uthgardt in, the 1490s to tell everyone where things are at, etc., and who's in charge, and etc. What I say to that is, it's really easy to change names in a product. Creating a few NPCs on the fly in terms of who the current chief of the elk tribe is, for example, who the current shaman of the red tiger tribe is at the moment. I don't think that's difficult for most fans of the game and DMs and players. What we wanted to do was provide a foundation, and where we could, we tried to give an insight into why the fifth edition tribes that have been showcased in Storm King's Thunder and a little bit in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide have done what they've done in the brief mentions that they've had in the fifth edition lore. So, for example, I had a lot of fun writing up the Grey Wolf tribe, which was a real challenge, simply because having a tribe of barbarian lycanthropes is not the most simple thing out there. And so I came to the decision that it had to be more than just every full moon they become werewolves and go on a rampage. I had to come up with ideas that made that representative of their tribe and who they were, as opposed to just a curse and an affliction. Um, and so that was a lot of fun, but it also gave a segue into how they look in some of the fifth edition products, in terms of some are a bit feral and savage, some are not so. And you get an idea that and I created a few disparate groups within that tribe, evolving disparate groups, which gave DMs flexibility to say, well, those grey wolves are because of this, but my grey wolves in my campaign are like this because of they're from this group, etc. And we asked the fan base whether they were interested in asking us a few questions about today's podcast. So I'll seize the opportunity to answer one of them. One of them was someone who's running a game in the Princes of the Apocalypse fifth edition adventure, and there's a discussion about an ancient burial mound for a great chieftain of the elk tribe, but it's away from the ancestor mound at Flint Rock. And the question was, why is one of their greatest warriors away from their ancestor mound, which is where the standard place to be buried is for most of the Great Uthgardt. Eric did a lot of work on the elk tribe. They feature in the adventure that we're playing haphazardly every Saturday night / Sunday for me. And what was clear about them was they had become very un-Uthgardt-like. They had devolved into a range of bandits and brigands, etc. And so the simplest answer to that question from Robbie, I think his name is, was that the elk tribe have gone in different direction. They're not sticking to tradition. They're not doing the old things. They're not bound by the requirements that great chieftains of the tribe are buried at Flint Rock at their ancestor mound. So the fact that this burial mound is away from their ancestor mound is no biggie for the elk tribe. They do what they want because they're not bound by those Uthgardt traditions anymore. So it's not an aberration. It's not a weird thing. Princes of the Apocalypse is right. It's a fifth edition product, of course it is. And so that's not an aberration. There's nothing wrong with an elk burial mound being away from Flint Rock. It's just his greatest supporters and family decided that they didn't want to bury him there. He was so important, such a great chieftain that he deserved his own special place of burial. That's pretty much the realms. We're all special.
We should probably do some more of the questions. I see another one here. And George, you might want to tackle this one as well. But first, I should also give credit to somebody else we haven't mentioned yet, Craig Vincent, an amazing mapper. He did the map that showed where the tribal locations were. It always bugged me that people didn't really have a great sense of the territories and that had never been completely specified where the territories are, and they're supposed to be overlapping. But he did a great job depicting that. But that then led to somebody's question now that we've actually shown where they are. So maybe you want to tackle this, George, or somebody else. It says the map of the Uthgardt lands clearly shows the Uthgardt have claimed just about every undeveloped region of the Savage North, or maybe they've tolerated the cities in a few places that they didn't claim. Depends on your perspective, as Ed was saying earlier. With the exception of the Nether Mountains, the Central Evermoors, and the High Forest, presumably because of orcs, trolls, and elves, respectively. However, there's a section of land between the Neverwinter Wood, the Desserin Hills, and the Elk Tribe territory that's not claimed by any tribe. Is there any reason why? Do they regard it as taboo? And was it a former territory of a now forgotten tribe? And since, George, you're playing a character from Longsaddle, I'm going to make you answer the question.
I can answer it, and I'll go with a running joke that that's where the River Desserin runs, just up there. But no, long ago I confused the long road with the River Desserin, and Eric's never let me forget it.
No, we always are looking for the river in Longsaddle.
I think if you look at that map, there is that big sort of, you could describe it as a donut between the Elk territory and part of the Thunder Beast territory and the Neverwinter Wood and the Desserin Hills, etc. My view on that is, if you look at where the other tribal lands are, they all have access to what can best be described as geography that can provide them with refuge. And those with less of an option for finding refuge, specifically the Sky Pony tribes and the Thunder Beast tribes, have two territories. The reason for that is, and maybe Ed can chime in on this in a little bit, about the Neverwinter Wood is always a place where seemingly no one wants to go into. I'm not exactly sure why that ever was. To my knowledge, it's never quite been explained. There is a Netherese enclave sitting in there, and it was an elven kingdom for a little while. But there is a long-running thread through the products, through the editions, that no one goes into the Neverwinter Wood. Ooh, it's scary. It's bad. So there's a taboo element to that any tribe having the Neverwinter Wood as a refuge. Similarly, the Crypt Garden Forest to the south has got a dragon in it, a big green dragon, and a range of other things, including vampire hill giants and all sorts of things. It's not the safest of forests, and it's also getting a bit south, if that means anything. It's getting closer to civilization. You've got Tribal there, Westbridge, Amphale just around the corner. It's getting a little bit too civilized for the Uthgardt tastes. And the other thing is, if you take away the Crypt Garden Forest and the Neverwinter Wood, the Desserin Hills are again a little bit too civilized, a little bit closer to civilization. You're not left with a lot of place to hide when the dragon comes rampaging down the valley with its mouth open, eating up whatever it's in its path. It's nowhere to hide when the orcs horde comes funneling down through the gap between the Lurkwood and the Neverwinter Wood, as many have over the centuries. It's not a great place to be, in the simplest of terms. So that's why the Uthgardt have never made that an ancestral home, in my view. It's just too open and not great defense-wise. It's going to leave you vulnerable.
That's like the most cogent answer I've ever heard from George in my life.
Wow.
And we're into the backhanded compliments part of it.
Yes, yeah. And I should add one thing about the Neverwinter Wood. The name Neverwinter was born in my 5-year-old mind as, okay, it's very warm there. so it's never winter in under the trees because of, the volcanic heat and all the rest of it. But also, the volcanic heat means that there could be poisonous gases there. So if you, as part of your, being a teenager and going and seeing the world and earning your quote personhood in the tribe, was going to explore that Neverwinter Wood, and inevitably, because it's a huge place, spending a night there. Well, what if you never woke up because poisonous gases or whatever? And then over time, it would be okay, let's stay away from there for that reason. So it was never, coherently laid out, because then I was into this is a local folk belief. And you want to give the dungeon master some leeway. Okay, why is it a local folk belief? And they might want to have a different explanation in their individual campaign in order to, like, shove a dungeon with a dragon in it or something, because it is Dungeons and Dragons. uh, but I mean, so, but it's enough that it's a folk belief. And um, the there are many, many things that get argued about, usually over beer in taverns in Milwaukee before Gen Con moved, um, where in-house designers and freelance designers would discuss things and figure out the reasons behind things. But in those days, when we were first discussing, there was no internet, there were no web enhancements, there were no handy pixels. Word count was word count, and there were certain people in the executive echelons of the company who were of the belief that if something didn't add to the adventure, it had no business being printed and occupying space in the product, because space was at a premium. So all sorts of explanations and behind the scenes things just got left out, because you could always put in another chart or table of, what's in the dragon's belly. And Neverwinter Wood and why it was shunned is one of those things.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a huge thanks to Craig Vincent for that map. He was infinitely patient about it being published. He provided it quite some time ago. It's been sitting on my hard drive for a long time, hoping that we get our act together and finally get this product out for the fans. And it's a testament to him, because I keep looking at it and thinking how gorgeous it is.
Yeah,
And similarly, a huge thanks to James Welch, who did all the black line or the tribal pics for the little intros. They're gorgeous, I think, and representative of how the Uthgardt would mark their territories, perhaps on tree trunks or stones or whatever. They're intentionally stylized and slightly simplified versions of the totem creatures, with the intention that that's what an Uthgardt would use if it wanted to say, Og was here. Yeah, big thank you to both of those individuals. They really made the product look fantastic.
Yeah. All right, I got a question. I'm gonna dump this one on Tom, because this is both a lore question and a mechanics question. So there's a question about, what dictates an Uthgardt tribe's ritual enemy. And we did try to work into the lore where those ritual enemies came from, but as this questioner asks, some of them are straightforward, like orcs, but other ones are really specific, like the elk tribes being ancient ones, or the great wern tribes being evil creatures as a whole. So that the breadth of them varies. Or cities of the north for the griffin tribe. So the questioner was asking, I think this is both a role-playing question and a mechanics question, and it probably depends on which edition you're playing as well. What does it mean to be an Uthgardt ritual enemy? Are they the target of tribal rituals? And, what does it mean for when you're battling set into me? Like in first edition, it would have been, we get a +1 bonus to hit. But what does it mean now in the context of 5e?
So I think, well, first, I mean, you and I were discussing this before we started taping, and I think, Janelle set up the enemies, and we were talking about this at the beginning, right? Like she set up the enemies, and it was interesting that she set up the enemies the way she did because they weren't always necessarily obvious enemies, and that's interesting, right? It wasn't like they all were like, we all hate orcs and civilized men from the cities. It wasn't just that. It was they were different, and there was a story to be told behind each of those enemies, which you and George, did through each of those historical write-ups for each of the tribes, which is amazing. I think from a mechanical point of view, obviously it depends on which edition you're playing. If you're playing in earlier editions of the game, then when you're a ranger, for example, you might make that your ritual, your ritual enemy, your enemy, and get a favored enemy bonus in earlier editions of the game. Um, in fifth edition, they don't really have like racial enmity bonuses anymore, per se. But you certainly could role play that. There's nothing stopping you from role playing and saying that, I have this animosity towards this group. There is some fun to be had in doing that. I mean, in our game on Saturdays, a bunch of us play dwarves, and we had a lot of fun where we encountered some orcs that weren't completely evil and vile, and our characters had to struggle with how they were going to manage that. And were we going to
So we
be
killed them.
we
Nice. I'm joking.
actually did it, right? I mean, but in our game where we role played that out, right? We had that structure of like, were we going to be like just completely like racist dwarves and like be like all orcs need to die, or were we going to recognize that this orc and this group of orcs were not like what we expected, and that they were different, and were we going to learn from that experience? I mean, not to get too deep. I mean, it is just a game, right? But we did role play that out, and our characters had a growth experience from that encounter. Um, and so I think there's a lot of ways you can integrate that that concept and have your characters have experiences through the game that are fun to role play out, as well as I mean, mechanically, I think the mechanics can follow, or they don't. It doesn't matter. I think that it is a role playing game, right?
No, that's great. Thank you. So we got another question here. Let me see if I can find it. Where did I put it? Which was related to that one, which was about who do the Uthgardt worship? And I think this is actually complicated in a bunch of different ways. Because in one respect, the Uthgardt worship Uthgar. And that's a really straightforward and simple way to think about their worship. But then the questioner also asked about, you know, how does Uthgardt relate to the totem deities versus the outsider deities like Tempest and Shantia? And there's also the gods of fury and the triad and the helm. And so how did all these sort of things interact? And we deliberately made it muddled and ambiguous, and the answer varied from tribe to tribe, right? George was talking about the Black Lions earlier. One of the things about them was that when they were Kalashite, they were like an honor guard or mercenary group, that basically abandoned Sindlespur and ran off into the wilderness. And there was a Kalashite god of justice named Anoktir from something Ed had written a long time ago, or maybe it was Stephen. I'm blanking. Um, and so we kind of played that up. And so the Black Lion tribe, in a sense, is more welcoming of outsider deities like Tyr, the Triad, that sort of thing. Um, we also played with, the traditional Ruathan distrust for the gods of fury. And if you look at the elk tribe, they very clearly embraced their own enemies as deities, right? And so in the campaign that I'm running, actually, one of the things the players had to do was to purify the tribe, kick out the worshippers of the gods of fury, and turn them back into an ally of the rest of the Uthgardt and the civilized nations, civilized cities. So there's a lot you can do with outsider deities. If you read Murray Leader's novel Son of Thunder, where he started was sort of where the North box set had left the Thunder Beast tribe, where they were semi-civilized, had adopted some of the Faerunian pantheon. And one of the consequences, hopefully this isn't a spoiler, it's been out for like 20 years, is that, by the end of the novel, he's moved them back towards a more traditional Uthgardt role. And I think that's probably true for all of the tribes, is that they kind of ebb and flow in terms of how much they're following the totem spirits plus Uthgar versus how much they're following the Faerunian pantheon. And that dynamic behavior, it gives your character something to react to and work towards, either to push them in one direction or the other, with them never completely going one way or the other entirely. So that's another thing that you can play with as well.
And one thing I always want to emphasize, because I encounter it so often at conventions, because so many gamers, so many players are used to a monotheistic system in the real world, they struggle with the implications of everybody believing in all the gods. And they will say, yes, but which one is my god? And I'd say, but it's not one. You believe in all the gods. Yeah, yes, but which one is mine? Which one, because they can't get away from this. And if you can think of everybody believing in all the gods, then it becomes all of these things about, okay, a tribe is drifting in this direction or that direction. It all becomes much easier because, okay, so it isn't winner take all. It isn't first past the post. It's like we all believe in all the gods. We worship them depending on what mess we're in at the moment. and then if you can nail that down and get comfortable with that, then everything starts to make sense as to why people would shift things, why particular clergy would have different degree of influence from time to time and place to place. And it isn't that somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. It's that this is the normal way of things.
I think that gets a little muddled sometimes also because, with Bane and Shar in particular being two of the major evil baddies, and they don't share well.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like Bane does to some extent, right? Like Leviatar was sort of his, I don't know, mistress, whatever, subordinate, and then others were his subordinates, but they're sort of seen as sort of more monolithic in some ways. And so I think it versus like the Gods of Fury, where it's like, well, Talos is in charge of this part of it, and he's sort of the big bad of the bunch, but the others are all like, they're all squabbling and like gnawing at his ankles all the time. So
yeah, and the other thing, of course, is the game makes it clear that we don't have predestiny. We have fallible gods. We have gods like the gods of the ancient Greeks and Romans. They are superhumans with all human foibles and weaknesses. They can't see everything and miss nothing. They can't plan in such a way that nobody can beat them. Their plan has to succeed because they're gods. None of that happens. Because otherwise, if you do it anything else, then there is no heroism in the game. There is no achievement because you're just mortals. You're just following the script, and that is the antithesis of what you're trying to do in this game. So, I think people tend to lose sight of that because we are used to, in literature, if nowhere else, Hollywood certainly, gods have really good propaganda. So, it's like, hey, we're really good at this. You cannot succeed. What is this cannot? And which is where the sayings from other IPs, like for a Jedi there is no try, there is only do, come into play. Because then once you start thinking that way, then so this law is eternal, but I can break it. What are the consequences of my breaking it? Which is a far more interesting role playing thing than, oh, you just can't do that
Yeah.
because the gods are infallible. Oh, no, 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 no. What if I break it anyway? Okay, now you've done it. Here we go. And the adventure unrolls. And it's way more interesting.
Yeah, no, and it's fun to come up with weird consequences. So like in the campaign that I'm running, one of the things the players do at around level 5 is break the elk tribe of their interest in the gods of fury. So the rest of the campaign sees the after effects of that. So they go almost immediately into winter, and Oral makes it the worst winter you've ever seen. Like she punishes everybody by inundating the landscape with one of the worst snowy winters you've ever seen, which also actually has a beneficial effect because it means the orc horde is stuck and can't attack the cities yet. So, like, you can do some fun things like that where the players do something, you can say, hey, maybe this pissed off a god, and that god reacts not by punishing the players, but by just manifesting their portfolio in an extreme event. And then what are the consequences of that? So you can do lots of fun things like that. We have a couple more questions here that are real specific that we can try to go through. One of them was to know more about the gold elves of House Ilviri, and the questioner could not find any more information about them. And this is the problem where I start writing something and then I start writing something new. And so House Ilviri is actually detailed in quite some detail in Crown of Irlan, which I've never actually published. So, but I just write about it like it's common knowledge. They were one of the ruling houses of Saluvanid, and they actually come from Rich Baker's Lost Mythal novel, or Last Mythal novel, and they get tangled up with House Lord Dragath and the creation of the Feyries. So they're not the nicest people, and they were part of the Saluvanid elite that kind of did all those nasty things. So that answers that question. The next one I'm going to pick on George because I like to close things down, and George likes to actually listen to Ed and open them up. And so now somebody wants to know, can you tell us more about the Sarlanor, Thalin's throne, and the heart of Runlatha?
Well, okay. The heart of Runlatha, you'll have to blame Murray Leader because that came out of the Son of Thunder novel
Yep.
from way back when. It was his MacGuffin to set up the story of the shepherds in the sanctuary in the middle of the high forest who guarded the thunder beast, the Apatosaurus. And it was an interesting part of. I really loved that novel. Actually, I enjoyed it immensely. One of my more favoured Forgotten Realms novels, and it was a little bit MacGuffin-y though. And someone made the really good point of why the hell was the heart linked with an axe, and how does that even work? And I'm sure it worked for the story, but in terms of the realms lore, it was a little bit of a mucking around, but we made it work. So effectively, it was Eric made it a magic item that was used to keep the city of Ranlatha safe from the Faerim and any enemies. So it worked as a big sort of shield slash illusionary item that provided wards that prevented their city from being easily accessed or even found by their enemies. The part about the Axe of Beren being linked to that was in the book, and so we had to go with that. And Eric made some backstory, so we're not at fault for that one. As for the other items that is mentioned by the poster, they are absolutely made up names, and they mean nothing or everything depending on your needs. I'm from the Ed Greenwood / Stephen Shen school of making up stuff and just dropping the hand grenade and running away and diving into the trench. So
What
I
is this
love
trench you speak of?
I love making up names of items and people and magical books and things like that, and just putting them in the text, and hopefully people can make something of them in their own work. Is there information about them? No, none at all, zero. But
We
there
did try
could
to
be.
do some of that to make some new hooks. Even though we
Yeah.
closed off a lot of hooks, we tried to open up some more.
Eric is a great hoover of hooks. He loves combing through Ed's old Dragon magazine articles and grabbing stuff and going, "Oh, I'm using that," or "Give me a name for an elf that lived 15,000 years ago who did this." And I'm like, "That doesn't exist, dude. Come on." He's like, "But find one." So okay. So yes, we churn through a lot of Realms lore in creating what we've done, and if you read deeply into the article, you'll come across a whole bunch of stuff that's been referenced in earlier products. When I was preparing the product for publication, the Word document that had the whole article was so unwieldy because of Eric's comments. He attached comment there were 10 comments per page referencing where in the Realms lore you could find the hook to this person or that place, etc. In the end, I had to delete them all just to make the document workable for editing. But the bottom line is we like bedding our articles into the Realms lore and using existing references and hooks. I like to make up some extra just to make sure that we haven't ruined your day if we've used, something in a way that was unexpected or in some way impairs your campaign. So, yep, the short answer is nothing. I got nothing. But have fun with it.
Yeah.
Make it up.
Well, should we wrap up a little bit and go through each person and see if they have anything they want to add? Curry, we haven't heard from you. You want to start? Anything you want to add?
No, I'm just sitting back taking it all in. I can't wait to read it. I haven't gotten a copy of it yet, but I'm looking forward to tearing through it.
Sounds good. Tom, how about you?
I would just like to, thank you guys for letting me be involved in the project, and also just point out that George did an amazing job finding the art and pulling and doing the layout and everything. I know you used a program to help with that, but you did an amazing job. It looks wonderful, and the lore that the two of you pulled together is amazing. So thank you.
Cool, thanks. And definitely agree with all of George's hard work. This would not have happened. This would have been yet another 80% finished product that I never did anything with if it wasn't for George. So with that, George, over to you.
Look, the only thing I'll say is this exercise has been really fun because I found 2 more typos in the article, which I've now fixed. So I'll be uploading a new version again. Because I sent the old new version to Ed just earlier this week, and I said, "That's it for the typos, we're done." But I think I said, "But I'm sure there's more," and sure enough, there were some more. Cool. But just as a little segue, I don't know, how do you share screen with this thing? Okay, are we allowed to share screen?
Bottom. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, where is share? Okay, here's going to be a quick glimpse. So I'll share and unshare about what might be coming next. So, oh no, I can't. Sharing is not turned on. So
I can't turn it on either. So we'll have to do that next time.
Yeah, we'll do that next time. So yeah, there's potentially another article in. You were going to get a sneak peek at the cover, and now too bad. So yeah.
What a tease! What a tease!
Charades.
But if you were paying attention to what Eric mentioned, my character that I play in his campaign, where it's from, it might give you an understanding of what the next topic might be for an article.
Hey, Jeff, turn on screen sharing.
I think Jeff got here just in time.
Dr. Pepper's arrived.
Yes. Turn on screen sharing, Jeff. No. I try.
All right, how about you, Ed? Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I just want to say a real big thank you to you guys for giving me yet another Realms lore product that I can roll around in like a puppy for hours, days, and go, oh, good. They're still publishing new Realms products. Thank you. So yeah, thank you.
Good. All right. Well, thank you everybody for doing this. This was a lot of fun. Jeff, Curry, thanks for pulling it all together. Hope you guys all liked it and read it. And hopefully you like the stuff that's coming.
Hey,
there's Jeff. George's hint should be Hatfields and McCoys. I think that's the best way to describe what might be coming.
I can't believe I made it.
Leave reviews on DM's Guild.
Yeah,
if you like the product.
We're just wrapping up, Jeff. So please, it helps to write reviews. Please write reviews on the website. And you can ask questions on the DM's Guild as well. You can also ask questions in the Sages of Forgotten Realms Facebook group, on the Forgotten Realms Reddit thread, and Candlekeep, on Ed's Discord, which is fabulous with lots of great Realms fans. All good places to do this. So lots of places to keep asking questions. If you find anything that doesn't work, please tell us. And we're going to keep updating it once a week with another spelling mistake that George finds.
Absolutely. That's our promise to you.
Yeah,
You can take that to the bank.
exactly.
Oh,
All
dear.
right. We'll end there. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.
Swords and shields we march across the land we've known. With a fiddle and a hurdy-gurdy, we'll dance around the fire. In the tavern we revel, let the spirit take us higher.
La 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 la.